Well, hi there, folks. Jack here. Getting ready for another episode of Miyagi Mornings, as always. We will hold up just a little bit before we get started to give people time to come into the live stream. I know that StreamYard's lying to me when it says 0 because, there we go. The numbers are starting to rise now because I'm talking to some of y'all in chat right now, so you have to be there. But this should be a good one. I get a lot of questions about entrepreneurship. I really like this one, and I think you guys will too. And I think it'll let me be, for some people, maybe a little more pragmatic than you think I am when it comes to this subject. I don't think everybody should be an entrepreneur, and I don't think the path to entrepreneurship should be the same for all. I think it's different for people as we go. I'm just getting the other side of the recording set up here, guys. That's what I'm doing while I delay install, and we are about to roll. I'm going to make sure Odyssey's working. I am on Odyssey, Float, and YouTube today. The only real advantage for me with YouTube is more of you watch me there, and then the other side of it is that, I actually have the comment stream directly into my control panel on StreamYard. So anyway, with that, we are ready to roll. Let me get the recorder up here on the other side, and let's dig into this one. Well, hey, folks, Jack Spirko here. Well, we're going to have to – there's a real-life technical glitch. We're going to have to start over, guys, with the recording that failed. Cleaning up temporary files. Thanks a lot for that, Audacity. It's the real world when we do this. Test. All right, there we go. That hasn't happened in a long time. Hi, folks. Jack Spirko here. Welcome to another edition of Miyagi Mornings. This is going to be episode 142. This one came in on the sticky post on MeWe. That is probably the best way if you want to ask for me to cover a specific subject is to do a little question and give me some details over on MeWe. Here's the question that I got today. Do you have a podcast on how to go from high school student to successful business owner without 4+ years of college? I have a homeschooled kid that has wanted to open her own business since she was 5, but everyone tells her she must go to college and get that business degree. That's interesting, isn't it? Everyone tells her she must go to college and get that business degree. Before I get into this subject, and I'm going to say that maybe for some people going to college and getting a business degree is the right path to entrepreneurship. First, I'm going to invoke one of Spirko's laws of life, and that is we do not take advice from people about a thing that they're not in some way successful with, right? You know what I mean? Like if someone wants to tell me how to run a restaurant and they've never run a restaurant, I'm not probably listening to them about how to run a restaurant. If they've at least run a business, I might listen to them about how to run a restaurant from the perspective of somebody who's run a business. That makes sense, right? And I'm asking a question here in the live stream. Do you think it's wise to take advice from someone on how to do a thing they themselves have not done? So when this person here is telling me that everyone is telling this young girl, the path to your success is to go to business school and get a business degree if you want to be an entrepreneur. My thought is, I'll bet you not a single one of these everyone's has ever run a business successfully. And most of them have never run a business. They're saying what they have been conditioned to say. And so my first bit of advice is do not take advice from people who have not done well at the thing that they're giving you advice on. And definitely don't take advice from people on how to do a thing they've never done at all. It's amazing to me how quickly people will open their mouth and tell a person far more motivated than they are how to do a thing that they would never even try to do themselves. And of course, their mindset is, well, you got to go to business school. All successful entrepreneurs go to business school. And I'm going to tell you that there's probably pretty close to an even split with this subject on entrepreneurs. I don't think it's that, most successful entrepreneurs don't go to college. I bet you it's close to half and half. If you judge successful business based on, and this is how I would judge a successful business myself. 5 years after it started, it either still exists or it's changed into something that's better, and it provides enough income for the person running the business to live life probably better than they would if they had a job in that sector. I would call that business successful. And if you do that in your first year, you make enough money to qualify under that definition, but that business goes bankrupt by its third or fourth year, it's also not successful. It wasn't built with longevity. Now, if you're a young person like we're talking about here, that's not necessarily the end of the world. I mean, you've learned so much from that process, and you probably are going to take another shot at it. And for my people that are in the audience now that are live, if you did start a business at any point in your life, how old were you when you started your first business? That's my next question that I'll be using and referring back to as we go through this subject. So I know with what I've just said, and I know many of you have listened to me for a long time, and you're probably thinking, Jack's going to just say, just start a damn business. Don't worry about going to college. I don't think that's a reasonable, pragmatic way to look at this, though. I think we actually have to look at your three primary ways that you can start a business, especially when you're 17, 18, 19 years old. You're just finishing up with high school, and you're trying to figure out, like, what's my path forward? I want to be an entrepreneur. One path is going to college. Another path is, and this is kind of an in-between path, take a job in the industry, in the sector, in the thing, in the niche that you want to build a business in. So I've already talked about running a restaurant, but I'd say, like, running a restaurant is a difficult business. And so if you did want to run a restaurant, it's also a place with a barrier to entry for employment that's very, very low. Anybody can go get a job like washing dishes and busting tables as a step in the door and end up fairly quickly in a decent restaurant, like doing some assistance in the kitchen and learning how to cook. Which is something that I really don't think you're going to do well with a restaurant if you don't learn how a kitchen runs. And so since it's relatively easy to get a job, the job's paid decent for what you're asked to do, and it will give you a brutal understanding of the commitment you're undertaking. If it was something like that, I'm leaning toward let's consider taking a job. The taking of a job in the area does two things. One, it helps you learn the area, learn the business, learn the sector, learn, all the things about it that you actually need to know to be effective in it. But the other thing it does is it gives you a real quick wake-up lesson. Do you like this? Because, for instance, I know a gal with one of my best friend's ex-wives. She went through all the hell to become an architect, and she hates being an architect. Now, she did go to college now because you have to do that, but think about that, putting that much time, money, and effort, losing all that opportunity cost, and then finding out you hate it. Well, college is a way that most people do that, but starting a business can be a way that you do that as well. And if you become successful but you hate it, then you get stuck in it. You feel like you can't get out of it unless you've built it to be sold, which you also should be doing. And then the other option is to go straight into running your own business. Personally, I did both 2 and 3. I started, I just asked the audience here, how old were you when you started your first business? If you want to just say doing a thing independently for money, I was in like not even middle school. I was in elementary school. And the first thing I think I ever did kind of hustle and money was back in the early 80s, cinnamon toothpicks were all the rage. And like my dad's like, those are just toothpicks soaked in cinnamon oil. And I'm like, really? Where does one get this cinnamon oil? So I was selling little bags of toothpicks, for $0.25. And there were more toothpicks and better toothpicks than you got from the ones in the store for $0.25. And they cost me about 2 cents a bag to make them. So it's a pretty good markup. I wasn't going to become a mogul off of that, but that's part of where this girl's coming from. Some of us are just wired this way. We see an opportunity and we realize, hey, I can capitalize on that. However, I did get jobs. My first job I ever had that was like a decent paying job, I pulled parts at a junkyard for a dude named Muskrat Purcell. And I learned a lot from that job. I learned about, how to get parts off cars, but I learned responsibility. Like, I never even saw the guy most of the time. I'd go in the office. I had my own keys. He'd have a list of where the cars were and the parts I needed to pull. And in the drawer, there was my money from last week. He paid me in cash. And I'd go around and I'd pull all the parts and put them in the bin. And if there was anything that like the part was actually bad or something was wrong with it, I'd make a note about it and put it in there. It's before anybody had a cell phone or anything like that. And, I did that for like a year and a half. I had other jobs at the same time. That job, even though it was a job, was very entrepreneurial. Because if I got up there and he had 10 parts I needed to pull, I made the same money if I pulled those parts in 2 hours or 5 hours. So I got that mindset going there too. But then I joined the Army. I went into sales and marketing. I learned a ton. And I launched my most successful business venture ever, the Survival Podcast, in my 30s. So I had, website-based businesses. I always had something on the side. And some of them made me more money than my job, but I still wasn't ready to go headlong out into the world. And I think this is actually a really good way for many people to get into running your own business, is go somehow learn the field. And I learned so much. Like when I think about how valuable, even though it was a miserable bastard company to work for, working as a regional sales VP for Fluke Networks for 3 years and managing a $500 million sales channel, I learned more from those 3 years than I guarantee you somebody coming out of business school learned. As far as how to actually manage cost centers, how to deal with retail and distribution and various tiered of distribution channels, how to manage cost of goods sold or COGS, basic financial terms. And then working as a year as director of marketing for Sage Telecom, I learned so much about how to think differently about marketing than just, hey, let's get this business closed. Right? I learned a lot about marketing analytics. Even though I'm not an analytical specialist, I learned what could be done. And then I applied that to what I knew about search and social marketing on the web. And like that was so valuable. Does that mean I couldn't have done TSP right out of high school had it been a possibility? When I got out of high school, you weren't running a podcast or wanted an internet yet. Not the internet that we think of today when we use that term anyway. And I probably could have, but I don't think I'd be anywhere near as good at it. I don't think you guys would listen to me as much. I think one of the things that I was able to bring to the table right out of the gate with TSP was financial knowledge and things like that. So there is a real place for kind of this lateral or a parallel career field as well. There's also a place for just getting it done. And I think the most successful young entrepreneurs pretty much come out of the gate, right out of school, and they do it. And maybe they fail a couple times so they figure something out. Or they tend to go to college, they start doing something peripheral at the same time, and they drop out of college. Some of our most successful business people are college dropouts. So that brings me to, what does college bring to the table? Who is college right for? I think college is heavily right for people if you want a business that's going to be a really big business, and you're going to go out and you're going to look for VC money, venture capitalist money. You're going to go out and talk to angel investors. You're going to be putting business plans together, and you're going to be going to banks, and you're going to be saying, hey, I want a small business loan. You do learn a lot about that if you go into business school. In fact, it's one of the few things of real value that they'll teach you. The other thing that happens in college that is incredibly valuable, if you go to a prestigious enough college so that some of the kids sitting next to you have multimillionaires or billionaires for parents. Because this is, if you go to like Texas State or something like that down here or whatever, it's not so much true. It's a good school, it's a good business school, but you're not gonna have like SMU School of Business. It has some of the more connected. It doesn't ring like an Ivy League, and it's not, but it has a very high number of highly connected people. And the professors at SMU School of Business are also highly connected. Like one thing that SMU did right with their business school is you don't go to college and get a teaching degree and knock around in the university system for a few years, get tenure and teach there. You actually have to go out and do something in business successfully. So if you can get into a place where, you look left and right and all around you, and you spend 4 years rubbing elbows and shoulders with people who are connected, if you want to build a big business, if you want to bring in investors, that can have as much value as anything they teach you directly. So I don't necessarily look at any of these options as bad. I just look at them as what works for you. And here's my 5 big questions to ask yourself. What area do you want to be in? I mean, I basically did whatever gave me a return. You know, I sold cell phones. I sold freaking pagers online. I had websites that sold long distance service all around the country. And I mean, any long distance sales site back then did that. But what I mean is I built sites that, like, if you went to Google or Yahoo or any of the other like search engines at the time and typed in like long distance phone service Philadelphia, you'd find one of my websites. I didn't give a shit about long distance phone service. It was just something I could sell and I made money. Like TSP was when I found what I really loved, you know, and I developed my skills as a teacher and things like that through learning. So if you would have asked me this question when I was 18 or 20 or even 25, my response would have been, I don't know, something. That's okay. But if you really know what you want to do, you can start forming a plan a lot quicker. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn enough to figure out what I loved, and I wasn't sure what it was yet. What are your current strengths and weaknesses? You know, my strengths back at this time of my life was I would, if there was something in the way, I'd move it. If there was a door and it was locked, I'll pull the hinges off and go through it. Like I had ambition. I had a willingness to work till 3 o'clock in the morning. It didn't matter what it was. If I had to travel, it didn't matter. And so that was a strength. A weakness was, if you would have asked me when I was 22 years old, what's COGS? Not only would I not have known, but I would have known that I didn't know. So, like, where are you weak? Because once you define where you're weak, you can figure out the educational path. And today's a different world than when I was a kid. A lot of the stuff that seems really complicated, you can take just the core business skills and things for free. Even a lot of colleges that you're supposed to pay to go to, maybe you don't get the credit for it, but when you need the knowledge. So, like, you can take courses at MIT for free. In fact, I think MIT, and I'm not saying that's a good business school, obviously, but I think you can take any course that any MIT student can take, you can take for free. And I'm sure those options exist elsewhere. But you need to do an analysis, like, as a business person, where am I weak? And what is my best path to shore that up? Next, do you plan on seeking funding via investors? If you do, even if you are not going to go to college for that kind of networking effect, then you know that you need to learn how do I write a business plan? And what is the difference between a plan and a proposal to an investor? And how do those two things go together? Again, when I was 22, I wouldn't have known that was a thing. They're the same, right? No, not really. Not really. They include a lot of components of each other, but no. So how are you going to go about raising funding if it's going to be necessary for what you're doing? Next, do you want to run a huge business? Do you want a mid-sized business? Do you want something that's more like a sole proprietorship? Do you see yourself running a business that's really just you? You're the only person in the business, but you're employing contract labor, or you're employing, like, you know, outsource or out-tasking models, more like 4-hour work week, which, by the way, great book to read. Some of it's not as practical as made out to be. Boy, it gets your head thinking. Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. I definitely recommend this young girl read that book and start learning to think differently. Also, totally a fake book written as though it's true. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah, it's not a real story. It's all bullshit. Kiyosaki's dad, retired with a salary of about $330,000 a year, and that was a long time ago. He was one of the most high-ranking people in the education system in the state of Hawaii. Right? He made a ton of money, but the book is still damn good. That's why it's sold millions of copies, because it's damn good. Get that mindset right. But what kind of business do you want to run? If you're thinking, like, some people are 18 years old and they're thinking, I want to build the next big tech business. I want to grow that sucker, and I want to take it public. You probably do want to spend some time in business school then. And you want to get into the most prestigious, most connected program you can get in, even if you don't complete it. You just want, because it's so much easier to meet people in that environment than to go trying to seek them out outside of a network. right? If you're like, I want to build like a whole shitload of websites that all work in this niche and they all sell product, and I want to set up outsourcing and, basically drop ship, or I want to go, I want to build an Amazon, then just do it. Do it, and you'll learn what you need to learn as you go, right? It all depends. And then why do you want to run a business in the first place? And this kind of goes back through the other 4 questions, right? But it's still its own thing. So do you want to run your own business because you have some misguided belief that you won't have to work hard? Because if that's what you're thinking, you work so much harder running a business than you do being an employee. And you won't ever understand that until you do it. I can think back to when I was in my 20s. I worked in structured cabling and optical cabling, and I worked my ass off, and I worked harder than anybody around me. And I rose up through that system really quick, but I was not paid really well for what I was doing. But I was paid better than I thought I was now that I understand how to calculate how much I cost my employer. I knew what the client was being billed. I knew what I was being paid. I did not understand the employee overhead at all at that point. I was very arrogant, and I was like, man, I could, just get that and for myself. And that's good because it motivates you. But when I started running it for myself, I'm like, oh. And even when I started doing sales jobs are incredibly entrepreneurial. Because if you think about it, your most important metric in running a business is how much business do you bring in? So a sales job is another good training tool. I think it's probably the best training tool I ever had. But what are you motivated? Do you want to change the world? You're probably going to go broke. You can change the world. But if that's there's so many young people like, I want to go out, man, and like give half my profits to some charity in Africa or whatever. What you need to do is go out and build a profitable business if you want to change the world. And you don't need to give, other than being ethical, which you should do anyway in your business. Don't give any concern to that stuff. And then when you build a really successful business, then you can help found a nonprofit, and you can take excess profit from your profitable business and put it in your nonprofit and direct it toward that world-changing mission. And that's okay to kind of have the knowledge that's what you want to do and have in your back pocket. But one of the most astute things I ever heard anybody say in my life was Mark Shepard at a permaculture thing. And he had all these young permaculture people, and they're all big on nonprofits. And he said something that I thought was freaking amazing. And that was, a nonprofit without a profitable entity attached to it is a professional begging organization. That's all that it is. So if you want a nonprofit component to what you're doing, you need profit, which to dispose of through the nonprofit, if that makes sense. So do a really big analysis personally of why do you want to do this in the first place? And I'll tell you, my motivation was simple. I wanted life on my terms. I don't care if I have to work hard or harder. Not a problem. I don't care if I have to suffer through some things until I make enough money to get back to where I was with employment. Not a problem. What I want to know is when I get up in the morning, I determine what I do. And given that that's the case, there's a whole shitload of things that I could be doing right now other than running a podcast. Then you start Venn diagramming, like, what do you love and what are you passionate about? Well, I'm passionate about independence. I'm passionate about real environmental issues. I'm passionate about systems and critical thinking. I'm passionate about teaching. So this is a perfect job for me. And guess what? You can't get this job. You can go create it for yourself. You're not going to ever like open the newspaper or go on LinkedIn, whatever. Professional podcaster wanted. That's not a thing. We're looking for somebody to set up his own show every day, do whatever the hell he wants, and we're going to pay you $150,000 a year. That's not a job that you can. So that's the other thing. That's why we want to really spend some time with this. Why do you want to do this? And this young gal, this is what she needs to ask herself. Because if you want to live life on your own terms, and when you start, doing that Venn diagram overlay, you start thinking about what you're skilled at and what you're interested enough in to get better at, and what you're passionate about and what you love, you're going to often find to really have what you're looking for, it doesn't exist. And so then you have to ask yourself, if you're going to create something that doesn't exist as a job, how much will business school really help you? And I'm back to, if you're not going to be seeking out funding, trying to hire lots of people, if it's going to be more of a one man, one woman show, then probably not a lot. And at least, I guess you call it auditing courses, but it's not even auditing courses because you're taking at least take some of these courses online first and see if they're going to help you. Because what happens is you have your really motivated young person and they're getting ready to go out and experience life, right? And then all the well-meaning people around them say, oh, you have to go to college. You have to go to college. These people have done no math on the subject. They have no idea. I mean, you need to be modeling, what is my degree going to cost? What does a job pay? How does it actually accelerate my ability to launch my own business? All of that stuff, and make sure the numbers work. Because if those numbers don't work, then that degree is worth as much as the advice from people telling you how to do a thing they have not done. Zero. And so that's kind of the best I can do for you guys today on this subject. And with that, we'll wrap up the podcast. And I will be back tomorrow. And we're going to talk a little bit, I think, tomorrow about cryptocurrency. All right, guys. I will hang out with you folks here in the chat for a bit. I just want to go ahead and get the file that I've recorded on the other device exported. And the reason I want to do that is until there's a potential to lose it. And you guys know me, we do not take unnecessary risks in our lives. That's part of preparedness. So once I hit this button, I'll bring my attention back to the screen. There we go. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And hey, sis, thanks for the podcast. I'm just going to remind people real quick here. This is not a podcast. I know it kind of seems like one. This is a live streaming video that's for a segment that will eventually end up audio only on a podcast. And the only reason I say that is that if you like this and you've been a subscriber, became a subscriber recently on one of the video platforms, and you're like, I like this guy. He's a dick, but I like him anyway because he's honest. You should know that I have an audio only podcast, and I really want you to come over and check it out. And how can you do that, right? Well, I got all these. Well, that's not the right one. Oh, there it is. Yeah. TSPC.co. It really works. You should give it a try. I am over looking at Float right now, and it looks like Kingsley, who is co-founder and co-owner of Float, just threw me like $9 worth of Bitcoin as a support in the Float chat. Dude, thank you for that. And he says, thanks for your support. You bet, man. I live for the day that I can have as many people watching me on Float as I do on YouTube. And today we're not that far off, really. In fact, I have to say the Float view count is still small, but it keeps going up. And look at me. I've got that right. All right. Does anybody have any thoughts on today's subject? IT student. I've been beating myself up with ideas and what product I could sell or create. Any advice? There's no way I can give you that advice, right? So you're just give me an idea. And so I think that what you have to do is you have to recognize the opportunity. So every product that comes into a marketplace that's ever going to be successful solves a problem. So if you are going to make an IT product, you need to make an IT product that solves a problem. The good news is there's tons of problems. I was just talking to Kingsley over here on Float. Kingsley is an example of someone that created a solution to a problem. Big tech keeps censoring everybody. Let's build a social media platform that doesn't do that. And let's make it badass. And let's get it out the door with something that just works to start out. It'll look like a Twitter clone, but let's get it out the door. Let's start building on it. Let's prove our concept. Let's seek funding. And then let's take this thing and let's take it right at the throat of big tech. Let's go ahead and integrate cryptocurrency. Let's go ahead and build a marketplace. Let's go ahead and create communities, right? Let's go ahead and add, live video, etc. And so if you want to create a product, you have to look for something that's missing. You might even, like, if you look at what I did with TSP, if you look around today, there's plenty of podcasts in general. I mean, like every major media outlet now turns their shit into a podcast. They put as much marketing into their podcasts as they do to their networks, etc. But in 2008, there weren't even a lot of podcasts. And there definitely weren't any good podcasts on preparedness. And the ones that were okay, they were very narrow. They were very much the kind of, without being extremist, kind of in the doomsday prepper realm. And I was like, I think people would love to hear about the holistic way to store food. I think people would love to hear why they should get their money out of the stock market right now because they're fixing to have a bloodbath. I think people would love to have somebody that takes the news, breaks it down to the non-bullshit direct version, and tells them either this thing doesn't affect you anyway, or here's how it really affects you and what you need to do about it. And nothing like that exists. So I guess I'll just go create that. And so if you want to develop a product, it's the same mindset. So even if you're talking about a content creation business, right? So there's a lot of YouTube channels on cooking right now. If I wasn't doing TSP, I would probably do something in the cooking food world. That's another thing I'm really passionate at. But I would try to say to myself, so what do I find lacking or wanting in the existing high quality shows for cooking? Where do I find myself fast forwarding, right? Where do I find myself going, even though I love this guy, I don't care about that video. And then I would try to build something that filled in the holes that I see. And in some ways, it's a little bit of faith and hope that the market sees it the same way. That's how you have to come at this. So there's absolutely no way I can say, here's an idea for a product. I will tell you this, ideas for products are fundamentally useless until executed upon. I don't get this so much anymore because I've been so brutal and honest about it. But like when I first started having real success with TSP, I used to get 2 or 3 people a week with, I have this great idea for a business, man. And I'd even get people like, I need you to sign a non-disclosure so I can tell you about it. I'm like, don't bother. I'm not interested, but I just need to make sure you're not going to steal my idea. Like, I don't have time to steal your idea. There's a bazillion ideas. What is the one that you figure out what you know and what you can learn and what you can do, take that opportunity and turn it into something? Faith and hope, the universe does provide if you ask. Some faith and hope without action, commitment, and a brutal work ethic when it comes to entrepreneurship. Faith and hope without those 3 other things, all 3 of them, won't get you a shitty coffee at Starbucks. You'll need to borrow $5 from somebody that has them. So I'm all about faith in yourself. I'm all about belief in yourself, hope in your future, but it has to come with brutality from a work ethic. And that's one of those things that totally unrelated, but another comment here, Hayes says, but it can't be bought. He's talking about freedom there, but that's the other thing, right? Like you can't buy success in business. You can buy a franchise, but that brutal work ethic, it still has to come there. And I don't think Misunderstood was doubting that, man, at all. I just kind of try to take opportunities to comment here. Got 2 folks over on Odyssey commenting, 6 watching. Cool. More and more people are watching the alternatives, but not really a question or anything like that. Anyway, I got to get wrapped up here because I've got a great interview today, and I have my 2 interview forms here. We have 2 interviews this week. Oh wait, there's only 1. And nope, I gotta talk to my wife and get my interview forms. I can't even tell you who's going to be on today because they're not on my desk. But it'll be good. So tune in. And I really think, I've been honest with you guys over the years. I was honest with you today. Entrepreneurship. My granddaughter's bringing me my form for today. Today we have Laura Emerson, and we are going to talk about butchering, hunting, and using bear meat for food in Alaska. I've had Laura on before. She's awesome. This will be fun. So yeah, we're going to do a true preparedness, kind of rugged outdoorsy thing. bear meat for the winter lauder. And but what I was saying is anybody can do this. Maybe not everybody should. Maybe it isn't right for everyone. But if when I ask that fifth question, why do you want this? I don't care what your answer is. If you can clearly articulate an answer to question number 5, the other 4 over time will fill themselves in. Because it is the why you want a thing that will lead to that brutal work ethic of, don't tell me, like, I can't tell you how many times I've had employees or contractors, well, I can't do this, or there's a reason. Don't tell me why you can't do it. Because I know there is no problem that can't be solved with time, money, or effort, or all 3. So don't assume that the fact that this is going to cost more to do means that I don't want to do it. Tell me how to do this, or tell me you can't do this and you don't know how to do this. Don't tell me it can't be. If you can have that attitude and you know why you want to do this, it is for you and you can succeed. With that, guys, I'm going to wrap up for the day. Appreciate all of you. And again, thanks to Kingsley for the Bitcoin contribution on Float. Take care, guys. Jack out.